Martin Woolworth.
When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut.
When I get married, I'd like to have 2 children.
My heart's desire is to see my daddy.
I don't want to answer that.
This is no ordinary outing at the zoo. It's a very special occasion. We've brought these children together for the very first time. They're like any other children, except that they come from startlingly different backgrounds. We brought these children together because we wanted a glimpse of England in the year 2000. The shop steward and the executive of the year 2000 are now 7 years old.
In 1964, World in Action made 7 Up, and we've been back to film these children every 7 years. They are now 49. Last week we watched 6 of our children grow up from 7 to 49. Tonight we'll see what happened to the others.
If I could change the world, I'd change it into a diamond.
I don't really think that I've done anything you can call a great success.
When I was born, you know, an illegitimate child, you know, that's something that's only whispered about.
If I could, I would have 2 girls and 2 boys.
At times you think, Christ, what have I done?
I read the Financial Times.
It's very irresponsible because we all want more money, as much money as we can get.
Nick, Simon, Lynn, Andrew, John, and Neil.
When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. But if I can't be an astronaut, I think I'll be a coach driver.
I tend to think the most likely answer is that I'll be wandering homeless around the streets of London.
We'll see if Neil is still wandering around, homeless and alone.
When I grow up, I'd like to find out all about the moon and all that.
Nick, a farmer's son, grew up in the Yorkshire Dales.
And I said I was interested in physics and chemistry. Well, I'm not going to do that here.
At 14, he was away at boarding school, and at 21, reading physics at Oxford.
So what career are you going to pursue?
It depends whether I'll be good enough to do what I want to really do. I would like, if I can, to do research.
By 28, he had moved to America and was doing research into nuclear fusion at the University of Wisconsin.
The fusion reaction gives off energy and produces the power that would be turned into electrical energy and sent out to the consumer.
How hot is it in there?
In there, it's at about 10 million degrees.
At 35, he was an associate professor, and at 42, a full professor.
And I've spent the last year and a half writing a couple of books. My ambition as a scientist is to be more famous for doing science than for being in this film, but unfortunately, Michael, it's not going to happen.
Over the years, Nick's research hit trouble, and by 49, he's had to abandon it because the containers needed to store the hot gases couldn't be developed.
Was there a moment when you realized that all you've been doing wasn't going to work out?
I think it was more gradual. I didn't want to admit it for quite a while. I mean, I really believed in it. It was a huge letdown.
So the area that I'm looking at is this times this.
I don't know why I have a compulsion to teach, really. It was just always there in me. I just wanted to do it. I thought I'd be good at it. When I go into a classroom full of undergraduates, I try and explain to them why they might want to try and do it. That's my little attempt to open a little door for them.
So I'm hoping that you will remember me being very stupid and going, ow, there's arrows coming out of here. Can we do that? Any chance of that? Okay.
They can get information from a book. I have to keep them awake and make the information a bit more interesting than a book.
I'm doomed to do this over and over and over. Okay, well, I didn't even know it was happening, so it was interesting because, you know...
Nobody's ever said that I was a typical engineer.
Of course they don't.
The undergraduates tell jokes about engineers, and the only one I can repeat to you is, how can you tell if an engineer is an extrovert? And the answer is, he looks at your shoes when he's talking to you.
Even though he's clearly a megastar, it's like...
Somebody came up with a theory recently that a lot of scientists and mathematicians are just borderline autistic. I could easily be borderline autistic, you know. I don't quite get how other people feel about things sometimes, you know.
Do you have a girlfriend?
I don't want to answer that. I don't answer those kind of questions.
I thought that one would come up because when I was doing the other one, somebody said, "What do you think about girls?" And I said, "I don't answer questions like that. Is that the reason you're asking it?" Yeah, I thought so.
The best answer would be to say that I don't answer questions like that, but I mean, you know, it was what I said when I was 7, and it's still the most sensible, but I mean, what about them?
Nick was only 17 when I first met him. I mean, if you'd been somebody who had fixed ideas of a woman's role in marriage that meant dinner on the table at 6 every evening.
Didn't I tell you about that?
His wife Jackie also taught at the university, and they had a son, Adam. 6 years ago, they divorced.
Well, it was incredibly hard. What I concluded, and I've talked to other people about this who've gone through it, I'm not sure if they feel it as strongly as I did, but it was like a death.
Anything could happen. We could easily drift apart. There are so many pressures on people.
If your spouse died, you could look back and think, well, it was wonderful while it lasted. But in a divorce, you can't look back and say, these are all happy memories. It wasn't my decision. She went to England. Her father was ill. By the time she landed, he died, and when she came back, it was like a different person came back. Was I responsible? I could have been braver about some things, but if I'd been braver, it might have ended sooner.
You can talk to me by myself outside, but I'll just meet you by the garage, okay? All right, bye.
It's enormously hard to deal with. The worst part of it was seeing how it would affect my son.
How old was he?
10. When he was first told, he was terribly, terribly upset. And then he just pulled himself together and didn't want to talk about it anymore. He's made the most of it. I mean, the best of it. Made the best that he can of it, I guess.
Take it easy, Adam. Main thing is not to crash.
Really? You don't want me to crash right now?
How does he deal with it now?
He doesn't talk to me about it very much at all. He's a private person. It's very, very hard for me to be spending a large part of my time with him not around.
Hey, Graham. What you doing?
I had to go to a graduation. One of my students was getting his PhD, and he insisted I go there with him. And I looked around, and the person behind me was Chris.
Hey, Graham.
Who is my new wife.
I'm okay.
Did you fall in love quickly?
Immediately.
Except that you decided that if I couldn't find you, I failed the test.
I decided it was his work to find me. We did shake hands at the end of graduation, stood up and said who we were, but he immediately forgot. He couldn't remember
I decided, okay, I know who she is, so I don't have to worry about that anymore, so I forgot. I mean, that's very me. She came down to the student union to meet me, and, you know, I barely knew what she looked like. I looked at her and I thought, I guess that's her, and I sort of just looked, did this, and she did the same. She just did a mirror image of that gesture, and I thought, I can't explain what that was, but I just felt very strongly drawn to her by that little gesture.
And there was no way I would say no to being married to this man. I wanted to be with him. Has he changed my life? Dramatically. Have I changed as a person? I hope so.
It will give them a push.
I don't mean to be superficial, but I think she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
Is he sexy?
Oh, man. Absolutely. Didn't you have fun with that one?
very good about the ducks. The ducks were...
I only have one child, Courtney, and he only has one child. There's a symmetry with that.
Would you ever have wanted a child of your own, the two of you?
Well, absolutely. But it's not exactly practical, so we're just...
No. Of course, Graham's added an element that's just joy. And I know Nick likes little guys. He just likes little kids.
They'd like to come out for a holiday in the country when I like to have a holiday in the town.
It is very difficult being in a place where you're a long way away from all your background and you don't have any sort of support network.
I could try and... It's frightening. It's frightening.
My parents are alive. They've both had very significant health issues. My father keeps pointing out that old age isn't for sissies.
Oh, I'm feeling. You need a secretary.
Nick has two younger brothers back in England, Andrew and Christopher.
Christopher, the deaf one, got divorced, and he reported to my mother that if Nicky can do it, then so can I. So that changed.
Are you missing England?
I always miss England. I was really not the sort of person who should ever have moved very far.
When he was 42, we took Nick back to where he had grown up in the Dales.
What did you learn here, do you think, that you've carried with you?
I sort of feel as if you could look deep somewhere inside me. I feel like there's some of this in there somewhere. I think of it as being magnificent, but rather grim, really. It's very uncompromising, and sometimes it's rather tragic, but, you know, it makes other places you go seem rather trivial as well.
We call it one of our Dales rooms. We have things that reflect the Dales in the room. We have cards that we've framed, and some of the china from Nick's family is displayed up here.
Well, we're driving from Madison to Minneapolis because Chris lives in Minneapolis and I live in Madison, so we go up and down alternate weekends.
Does it put a stress on the relationship, these separations and reuniting?
I would say, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder, really.
Chris lives in Minneapolis, a 5-hour drive from Madison, where she's an associate professor in the Department of Education.
Hey, you want to see something? Good.
I mean, work's a big part of both your lives, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So we're both kind of workaholics. Got a bit of a comb over there going on.
Is there anything in him you would like to change?
Well, that would be really risky business, wouldn't it?
Well, I thought you had changed. If you no.
You know, you don't mess with Mother Nature. In terms of little things like how somebody does their toothpaste, or, you know, those silly nonsense things. He would not just say yes, he immediately attended to it. I'd never been with anybody who did, so you have to be really careful with what you ask him to do. Oh, go easy on the butter, please, all right?
Okay.
I mean, I could see it being a slippery slope. You know, I didn't want to go that way in terms of my ordering his life.
Too many demands.
I didn't want him to be a different person.
If I could change the world, I'd change it into a diamond.
I think this film is extremely important. It's important to me, but it seems to be important to other people as well. That doesn't make it an easy thing. It's an incredibly hard thing to be in, and I can't even begin to describe how emotionally draining and wrenching it is just to make the film and to do the interviews. And that's even when I'm pretending that nobody else is watching it.
I think it's a heavy reminder that he's missing his roots. I mean, there are an awful lot of emotions attached to having a scrapbook that's as vivid as this.
I'm going to work in Woolworths.
Lynn is the third of our East End girls. She went to primary school with Jackie and Sue but chose to go on to a grammar school. At 21, she set out on a career as a children's librarian in a mobile library in East London.
Have I stamped yours?
Yes.
Yes? I've not stamped yours. Sleeping Beauty. Teaching children the beauty of books and watching their faces as books unfold to them is just fantastic. To work with children of that age, you've got to love them. And I love children.
Because of cuts in the education budget, the mobile library was shut down. At 42, Lynn was working at Bethnal Green Library.
You can draw better than I can. Good morning.
At 49, she's still there.
Good morning.
What about you?
Good morning.
Are you going to say hello?
Good morning.
How much of your work is with people like this?
Probably 5%. It's a very, very small part of it, but probably currently the most challenging part of it.
Elephant?
He's an elephant. How's the elephant? Where's the elephant? We still get 6 other schools regularly send classes in here. It's busy most days.
Well, I know he is her and he loves her. I don't. I love him.
I've been married a year and a couple of months. You do think, Christ, what have I done?
When she was 19, she married Russ.
We married young, but because we wanted to go out and have fun together. 30 years and we're still together. He's my soulmate, he's my partner. We respect each other. Hence, he's not here, and you will not see him on this film, because he's always, always felt that the intrusion that into our private life that this causes is too much. I wanted white wedding, all trimmings, and Russ would have been satisfied with, so very little.
Are you in love?
Very, very much. He knows how much I love him, and in my heart of hearts, I know how much he loves me. I put him on the spot sometimes.
If I could, I would have 2 girls and 2 boys. Yes, boy.
Lynn and Russ have 2 daughters, Sarah and Emma.
Emma's the installation coordinator for in the company. Sarah is an accessories buyer. It's a family-run business.
At 42, the girls were both doing very well at school.
All right, darling?
Neither of the girls went to university?
No. No.
Was that disappointing to you?
No. Their choice. We discussed it. It's what they wanted to do. They felt that the academic side wasn't for them. You have to accept that it's their lives, and you can only guide and be there for them.
Oh, you good boy. Where's your drink?
So you got a grandson?
He's a lovely lad. He really is. I'm watching him in the same way. I mean, from 21 years ago when I held Sarah up when she was just born, and now watching Emma now. And what goes round comes round. Because Emma now says that she says things to Connor that she can hear me saying to her.
What a rabbit, yeah. You'll have to look out for their holes.
That still cashes me out on times when suddenly I say something that was purely and utterly me mum.
Sorry.
So was the arrival of Connor a shock to you?
No. Well, yeah, but no, I mean, as soon as Emma was expecting Connor, got the phone call, Mum, need to meet you. So she actually told me face to face that she was expecting. Fine. She was 19. Yeah. She's old enough. Watch it, you.
You'll go to bed as well.
When she was 35, Lynn was having health problems.
They stuck all these tubes up inside me and discovered that I've got these veins up here that shouldn't be there.
In your brain?
Mm-hmm.
And what can they do about it?
Not a lot at the moment. No change. It's not going away, but it's no more problems, nothing. And, I mean, you have the aches and pains of getting older. I got bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome in both my wrists. Guess who had it? My mother. And, but it comes and goes, hence magnetic bracelets, which help. And, but you have to overcome it. What's white? Red. Yeah, we know that's red. For the last 30 years, banged my head against a brick wall to maintain children's services, but this time around, no one's listening. We've just done purple. They say that the work that I do, that anybody can do it. There would be no specialist running it. One. I may not have a job.
Hern loves Tintin.
Hern
Do you want to take
absolutely
this
adores
one?
her Tintin. Yeah, yes. It's cost cutting.
So that's what it's about.
Yeah. They would deny that. You can speak to me today.
No.
No. That's here.
Is it emotionally very demanding working like this with people like this?
Yeah. But it's so fulfilling that beyond belief. Azir, can you say it for me? I know you can. But are you getting... No, I know. You're not going to do it today. Azir spoke to me on the phone a couple of years ago, the first time he'd ever spoken to me, and really got me. It's extremely difficult for him to speak, and when he does, you know he's making so much effort, and it gets me. Excellent! Thank you, Azir. Thank you.
Come a long way since the back of a van.
A bus? Now, I was on the back of a bus yesterday. We took a mobile vehicle out to a school who was having a book week just around the corner, and I had forgotten how much it sways. Where'd you stand?
It's been a hell of a commitment for you, hasn't it?
Yeah. But it will end.
But has it been worth it all?
Yeah, very much. Come on, speed it up. All these things that I've said over the years are flying through my mind at the moment, but yes, it has been worth it. And you better cut it, because otherwise I'm going to cry.
What do you think about rich people?
Well, not much.
Tell me about them.
Well, they think they can do everything without you doing it as well.
Simon was brought up in a children's home, the only child of a single parent.
Rich people, they have all different things, have everything they want, whereas poor people, they don't have nothing, and they know they haven't got nothing, and so they know they're missing something.
What are you missing?
Well, I'm missing a bike and a fishing rod. And
20 years ago, when I was born, you know, an illegitimate child, you know, that's something that's only whispered about. People, you know, feel strongly about it in those days, but nowadays it's not a serious matter. The serious point is whether you stay with somebody or you leave them. Since 21, I've got married, had a couple of kids, and
By 28, he had married Yvonne, and they had 5 children.
well, I don't think there's anybody else I could have ever married except Yvonne. It gives me my life, really, because we're together, we have the children and everything.
By 35, they were divorced. At 42, he had married Vianetta.
We used to go out when we were younger. We met in the laundrette.
Once a week.
Once a week in the laundrette. Like things. Go and get the water bed now and come up.
One stage we went to marriage guidance because the pressures of being together were getting to us because we are two completely different people. I'm very laid back. You know, as she always says, if I go any further back, I'll fall over. But
look, broccoli. When two people together, and you both had separate lives, it is hard. You know, silly things like leaving the toilet seat up or something, or when I put something here, I expect to see it then. Simon can be really untidy, you know, he'll take everything off and fling it around the house, you know.
Sorry, dear.
Oh, I don't want it all mixed up.
No.
Is he romantic?
If we've had an argument, and he doesn't know, because I will shout, and he'll think, what have I done? And I'll be here, and like now, and I'll be here, and I'd see him with flowers and a bottle of wine or something. And then he'll say, I'm sorry for, I don't know what I've done, but I'm sorry.
Vianetta already had a daughter, Miriam, and she and Simon have a son, Daniel. Is there anything of you in him?
It's dashing good looks, yeah. That's me. And his love of sport as well. He goes to school in Slough because that's where they do grammar schools. He's doing very well there.
They say, where's your father then? You know, when your mum's out at work, instead of your father. And I just tell them I ain't got one.
They've got everything then. They've even got what I never had. So,
which is what?
A father, isn't it? So, I mean, they've had everything. At one stage, they would stop seeing me at all. But now, a bit older, a bit wiser. And I'm a bit older and wiser, and now 3 of them see me. Jessica's been very busy herself. She's got her work, she's got college. So who do you support? So your lot come second. Jonathan's been in transitional period with changing jobs and building up his new life. The two that don't, I can't really see their point of view.
So what's it like being a grandfather?
Oh, it's bloody easy, actually. You can see them all day long and then let them go back.
And you've got one?
2, actually. One that I see, and one that I would only see if I kept going round to see him. Otherwise, I wouldn't see him, so I'm waiting for a return visit now.
Before I'm old enough to get stuff, I just walk around and see what I can find.
I was going to be a film star, but now I'm going to be an electrical engineer, which is more to reality, really.
By 21, Simon was working in the freezer room of Wall's Sausages in London.
I know I can't stay at Wall's forever. I mean, it's just not me. I couldn't stay there for that long. My mind would go dead.
I'm quite happy to stay there. Doesn't look like it's going to close down, so, I mean, better the devil you know, innit?
Walls did close the factory down. Since then, he has worked near Heathrow Airport, handling freight.
The only reason I really went there was to work near to where my son was going to school so I could drop him off.
Do you feel you could have done more with a career, with your work?
If I'd pushed myself at school, probably I could have done a lot better.
Does that give you pause for thought?
No, that means I was a lazy sod when I was younger. Somebody once said that you don't live to work, you work to live. And that's how it should be.
Obviously, when children come into foster care, family and friends are involved as well.
A couple of years ago, Simon and Vianetta decided to train as foster parents.
Went to boarding school when I was young, and I always felt that that was regimental. It didn't allow for personal care, for loving from the adult carers. So I wanted to do something like that for myself, you know, in my own home.
And we always say to foster carers, please do not cut the children's hair without the permission of the parents.
So what's the toughest thing about being a foster parent?
You're taking a chance when you do it, because you really don't know what you're getting. One child had 2 knives in her hand because she didn't want to stay in this country. 2 knives in her hand.
She threatened you?
No, she was just a threat to herself. Some of them come back, they ring you up and say, hello auntie, hello uncle, how are you? They come and have Sunday dinner, come and visit us, which is good. At least you know you've made a little difference to that child's or that person's life.
Okay, obviously we have Heathrow in our borough, and that gives us extra things that foster carers might need to do.
So where are these children coming from that come to your house?
All over the world. So anywhere.
Anywhere.
When they come off the plane, they're expected to be meeting somebody.
Yes.
But that person doesn't turn up. How you doing?
Simon had been at the children's home with Paul, so we brought Paul back from Australia to reunite them.
It's good though.
Yeah.
And you can see Windsor Castle from that house.
Oh, look at that.
We don't actually see each other, touch each other, but we're living each other's lives.
Yeah.
Every 7 years it all comes back, and we get up to this far, and we've done this, and you've done that. I remember him.
When they were 21, we took them back to where they'd spent some of their formative years together.
Went over forwards or something. Yeah, he's a real bastard.
I do try to be disciplined, but I actually hate discipline. I believe the school has taught me that.
There's always been a bit of turmoil inside. I believe that divorce affects children a lot.
See, I can get on well with my mother sometimes. We talk very well with each other, but it's sometimes not quite as mother and son.
When he was 35, Simon's mother died of cancer.
There were so many things I never actually said to my mum, that just things that, you think about afterwards. It's too late because they're not there anymore.
What sort of thing?
Just I love you every day, Later on in life, I did realise that she got depressed as well, so that was probably a bigger reason than not being able to look after me.
My mother wrote to me when I was 21 and I hadn't really had any contact with her. When I was 21, she came out and visited. I did grow up without her, so it was like looking at a total stranger. I didn't recognise her at all. So there was no real in-depth feeling there.
Paul, get in there next to them as well. Come on, let me get you organised.
Are these two guys very alike?
Well, I think they're alike because they don't seem to jump into things. I'll stand back and have a little look at it. You make them enjoy themselves. Like when we went for a walk around London yesterday, I said, you are coming and you are having a good time doing this. And he did have a good time doing it. So they're both very family orientated. And they're both married, noisy women.
That's true. That works for me.
I had one dream when all the world was on top of me and everything was on it, and I just about got out and everything flew up in the air.
I still look up in the sky because I don't know any better. Everything I have, I always think, is that okay? Is that right that I should have that?
People are undecided about you. They could be your friend one day and not the next.
I wanted to be a boxer, actor, but I never actually really wanted them. I just wanted to be liked.
Paul actually that's all he ever wants out of people, is just people to like him for who he is and what he is without having to put on any false pretences. I think that's why he doesn't open himself up to people.
Hello, darling. How are you doing? All right.
Do you have any regrets, the two of you?
Yes, I do. We didn't get together earlier.
I think marriage is good for me.
What does she give you?
Hot dinners and a warm bed. No, I don't. She gives me a balance in my life because on my own I will probably be your typical slob. Men behaving badly. We do get things done and we do things together, Because he was multiplying before, so now he divided.
Is it tough for the two of you being in these films?
I will say that I do love watching everybody else. I always hate him, to be honest. And by the end of it, I normally hate you. So direct all of my anger in one place.
I read the Financial Times. I read Observer and the Times. What do you like about it? John? Well, I usually look at the headlines and then read about it.
At 7 years old, John, Andrew and Charles were in a private preparatory school in London.
What's the point of the programme? It's the point of the programme is to reach a comparison. I don't think it is. Because we're not necessarily typical examples.
And I think that's what people seeing the programme might think.
Yes.
Falsely.
That's one of the troubles with this sort of programme. I don't really think that sort of people like us have, unless we're being seven and being rather funny, have very much to say that's very interesting. Because, I mean, we don't know very much.
Well, we didn't know very much when we were 7, but we were still quite funny.
What do you think about girlfriends at your age? Tell me what you think.
I've got one, but I don't think much of her.
They're no longer just bores who won't play this or something.
They're over half of the community and they're there.
And you can begin to talk to them.
I don't think I financially come from the same background. Andrew didn't go for a haughty deb. He went for a good Yorkshire lass. But, I mean, obviously he knew what he wanted.
Does money concern you a lot?
No, I think as long as one has enough to be comfortable, that's really what one should aim for.
What's the most difficult thing about keeping the marriage together?
I don't think it is particularly difficult, actually. We seem to manage all right. Would you say?
I think so. We talk, don't we?
I mean, so how is married life?
Well, I still love him, if that's what you're asking.
And likewise.
I'm going to Charterhouse. And after that, Trinity Hall, Cambridge.
Andrew went to Charterhouse and Cambridge, where he read law.
I'd like to be a solicitor, and also fairly successful.
At 28, Andrew was a solicitor.
What qualities do you think it needs to be successful?
Well, you have to have a legal ability in my business, obviously.
By 35, he had become a partner.
In a couple of weeks, we're going to be having our legal conference in Dublin.
At 49, Andrew has left the law firm.
I moved to a large industrial gases company which makes oxygen and nitrogen, hydrogen, things like that.
Were you taking a chance?
Yes. I've been at the same firm for over 20 years. But it's not very challenging. And changing like this, particularly quite late in your career, sort of stretches you.
I think it's not a bad idea to pay for schools, because if we didn't, schools would be so nasty and crowded. Yes. So do I think so. Yeah. And the people in the schools wouldn't, and the man in charge of the school would get very angry because he wouldn't be able to pay all the masters if he didn't get any money. Yeah.
And education is very important. And you can never be sure of leaving your children in any worldly goods, but at least you can be sure that once you've given them a good education, that's something that no one can take away.
Andrew and Jane have 2 sons, Alexander and Timothy.
Alexander's at university, he's in his first year at Newcastle. And Timothy's at boarding school.
I think he'd like to go to university, but I think that's as far as he's got, really. Maybe even over the summer holidays we might start to talk to him about are there any universities he'd like to go and look at.
Andrew and Jane live in London, but they have a second home in the country.
Well, we bought it about just when we got married. It was a 200-year-old barn that we bought in an auction, completely derelict, nothing in it at all except for manure. And then slowly over the years we've just been converting it. But it's really taken us up until fairly recently to do that.
Ollie, come on.
There's a railway line that runs along the bottom of our land. There's a fox's den down there. We've been seeing a few cubs recently.
What sort of hobbies does Alexander enjoy?
Well, on the odd occasion, he's quite keen on doing what we call dangerous sports. And we're going to treat him to a balloon ride, sort of in advance of his birthday, which is coming up soon.
Here we go. See you later.
I have actually been in a balloon once myself. It was for my father's birthday. It was all going very well until the end, when we managed to hit some trees and...
Oh, don't tell me that now.
We all landed on the basket all landed on its side.
It's very high. Very high.
What can you say? Yeah, when we landed there was a request that all the ladies go downwind so that we could land on top of them.
Once I had a talk to Greville. He was in my house, and I asked Sir if he could put him out of my house because he was always getting minuses.
Do you think life is tougher out there for your children than it was for you?
Yes, certainly. I think it's much more competitive for children.
When I leave the school, I go to Broadstairs, St Peter's Court.
If you look back at us sitting on the settee at the age of 7 and I was saying what I was going to do, it's as if my life was mapped out for me.
Trinity Hall, Cambridge.
You know, you could never get a child doing that now, saying I'm going to go to Cambridge. Things have become less certain as a result.
And you three on that settee had huge opportunity.
We did, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I think boarding makes you feel self-sufficient. And also it teaches you to be away from your parents and to live with people.
And who was the big influence in your life in giving you a sense of proportion and value?
Well, obviously it's your parents. You know, they bring you up for the first 18 years of your life.
Well, I have my bath at 6 o'clock. And then...
Do you ever look back and think, is there anything you would like to have been different from what it was?
I think from my point of view, perhaps as the children were growing up, I would have liked to have spent a bit more time at home with them rather than in the office. But that's something that, you know, obviously it's too late to do now.
So everything we say, they'll think, oh, that's a typical result of the public school system.
You know, when we were 7 and 14 and 21, we were fairly prepared to say what we thought. But we've become more guarded over the years.
What are you guarded about?
I'm guarded about being guarded.
Here we go!
So did you have to fall on the ladies?
No, the lady fell on me. But it was my wife, so that was good.
When I leave school, I'm going to the dragon school. I might. And I might go to... After, I might go to Charterhouse, Marlborough.
I don't particularly want to be rich, but I'd like to have enough money.
Charles went to Marlborough and then on to Durham University. Since 21, he's taken no further part in these films.
When I leave the school, I'm going to College Court. And then I will be going to Westminster boarding school if I pass the exam. And then we think I'm going to Cambridge and Trinity Hall.
John went to Westminster, then on to read law at Christ Church, Oxford.
I think he'll follow the legal career with a view to ending in Parliament.
Might be at the bar.
Doing what?
Perhaps chancery practice. I now have a career. I'm a barrister. Other than that, life chugs along in varying degrees.
Well, in a sense, not very much has changed in my career over the last 14 years. I'm still a barrister. I still wear a curly white wig. The only visible difference, I suppose, is I wear a silk gown because I'm now a QC.
Are you ambitious?
Yes.
What for?
Fame and power.
What sort of power?
Political power.
I'd quite like to go into politics, but I mean, that's you know, easier said than done.
I have actually thought about whether I shouldn't try and get myself onto the candidates list. But who knows? I haven't written myself off as a potential politician, even though I'm already 49. I worry about the quality of our democracy. I worry in particular about this government. Not because they're socialists and to round us all up and take us off to Trafalgar Square in tumbrils to face the guillotine. Far from it, in fact. Tony Blair is a very good conservative, as I see it, but rather because of the insidious damage they're doing to our constitution.
The rich children always make fun of poor children, I think. Yes.
And it's very irresponsible, because we all want more money, as much money as we can get. And
The acquisition of sacks and sacks of money is not something that I set much importance by. I'm not money-minded, I would say, in that sense.
I mean, obviously, it's nice to have a fair amount of money, and money doesn't enable you to go on nice holidays, buy nice things, so on and so forth. But it's, as a goal in itself, no. I mean, who wants to be the richest corpse in the graveyard?
By the time he was 35, John had a house in London and another in the country.
I seem to spend an awful lot of my time gardening furiously, trying to tame the wilderness that we inherited there. I'd have laughed if 10 years ago you'd have told me that I would spend most of my time digging herbaceous borders and things, but that's what I seem to do, and I enjoy it. One good thing about having quite a large house in the country now is that I've taken up playing the piano.
It's a very nonchalant little theme. Butter wouldn't melt in its mouth, so take it very quietly, let it just present itself.
A couple of years ago, I did start again and even practicing, but I'm afraid I've lost an awful lot of dexterity. Whether it's old age and arthritis or whether it's falling off horses too many times, I don't know, but I mean, I don't feel I've got quite the dexterity in my fingers.
Certainly, I can never tell the difference between you playing and the CD playing when I'm out of the room. Yeah, very good. Very good.
Well, she's very diplomatic.
No, it's true.
When boys go around with girls, they don't pay attention to what they're doing. For instance, my grandmother had an accident because a boyfriend was kissing his girlfriend in the street.
By 35, John had married Claire, the daughter of a former ambassador to Bulgaria.
It is coincidental that we met, but it's obvious that the Balkan connection was a strong mutual interest.
We have a charity, Friends of Bulgaria, which started in 1991, which actually made quite a lot of money, which we then invested in medicine and took out to Bulgaria. We support some children's homes in Stara Zagora, an institution for disabled children, and we make donations to other charities.
People who go on about the government butchering the National Health Service, I think should come over to Bulgaria to see what being kept short of necessary supplies and funds really does mean. We've been told that in some places it's impossible to do even operations, albeit they have the operating theatres and they have excellent doctors, for want of simple anaesthetics.
Up till then, there'd been no provision for education of disabled children. So we started what was called a parallelka, which is parallel education for the disabled, and we've now got 2 classes here.
My name, this is Christiana.
Christoph. Claire and I have been giving prizes to the most talented children in this town. This school that we're in was actually built by my family at the end of the 19th century, and they also used to present prizes to the best children from the school each year, right until the advent of communism in 1944. I come from a very old family with big traditions of service to this country, and really, when I come here, I feel very proud of them because I feel in so many ways they've helped build Bulgaria. This church is quite interesting. It was built by my great-great-great-grandfather in 1835. They say he made off with 8 tons of gold, and even today the mountains here are full of treasure hunters who keep digging up all the caves and everything in the hope of finding the treasure. I wish I could find it. I mean, once I'd refunded my Equitable Life Pension Fund, I reckon if I shoot the horses, shoot the wife, and only drink Bulgarian wine, I may be able to retire age 94 or something.
Throw back a net, so you got 3 minuses in a day. He's a pest.
It has to be said that I bitterly regret that the headmaster of the school where I was when I was 7 pushed me forward for this series, because every 7 years a little pill of poison is injected into...
I know.
Well, it's the truth.
There are times when I felt appearing on this may get causes near to my heart a bit of publicity, and certainly when you came to Bulgaria for the 35 Up programme, that did lead to us getting quite significant assistance, which possibly we wouldn't have got.
Well, I think it's a very good system.
I suspect that why this programme is compelling and interesting for viewers, and I quite see why it is because really it's like Big Brother or I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. It is actually real-life TV, and with the added bonus that you can see people grow old, lose their hair, get fat. Fascinating, I'm sure. But does it have any value? That's a different question.
Well, we pretend we've got swords, and we make the noise of the swords fighting, and when somebody stabs us, we go, ah!
Neil grew up in a Liverpool suburb. He had dreams of going to Oxford, but didn't get in. Instead, he went to Aberdeen University, but dropped out after the first term. At 21, he was working on a building site and living in a squat.
I would like to be somebody in a position of importance, and I've always thought this. But I don't think I'm the right sort of person to carry the responsibility for whatever it is. I always thought, well, I'd love to be, possibly even love to be in politics or something like this.
By 28, he was homeless, wandering around the west coast of Scotland.
If the money runs out, well, then for a few days there's nowhere to go to. And that's all you can do. I simply have to find the warmest shed I can find.
How do people regard you here?
Well, I'm still known as an eccentric. I'm not claiming that I feel as though I'm in some sort of nirvana, but I'm claiming that if I was living in a bedsit in suburbia, I'd be so miserable, I'd feel like cutting my throat.
At 35, we found him living in a council estate on the most northerly part of Britain, the Shetland Islands.
It's an environment which sustains me. It's one in which I can survive. The reason I don't feel safe is because I think I'm getting more and more used to this lifestyle, which eventually I shall have to give up.
And what would you like to be doing, say, in 7 years?
I can think of all kinds of things I'd like to be doing. The real question is what am I likely to be doing?
What are you likely to be doing?
And that's a horrible question. I tend to think the most likely answer is that I'll be wandering homeless around the streets of London. But with a bit of luck, that would happen.
I'll just point out some of the considerable disadvantages. First of all, they are geographically isolated.
By 42, Neil had moved to London and was a Liberal Democrat on Hackney Council.
While I was in Shetland, I felt very strongly that I should become involved in politics, simply because I felt I was not achieving anything in the ways I really wanted to.
So I didn't expect to see you driving, Neil.
Well, neither did I. I mean, if you'd asked me that question a few years ago,
I would have been surprised. Well, it was my brother's wife's car, and fortunately she was about to change vehicles at the time, and they let me have it without charge, which was really a very magnanimous gesture.
At 49, Neil has left London, moved to Cumbria in the northwest of England, and become a member of the local district council.
Thank you, Chairman. Fairly simple. It was a committee decision, a majority decision. His own group on the establishment committee agreed with the decision.
Councillor Hughes? Well, for Councillor Nine's information, Councillor Cook has reconsidered his, the opinion he ventured at that meeting. I'm a Liberal Democrat. I'm standing for the County Council for this seat, which is 400 square miles in size. So it's a huge constituency, and this is only one of the 84 seats.
And who has the seat at the moment?
It's a Conservative councillor at the moment.
Big majority?
Significant. There's a lot of work for me to do. If not this time, maybe next time.
What are the chances this time?
I'm doing my best. Funnily enough, when I first came up here, I was considering giving it up altogether. But after only about 2 days, after that I just got involved again, so maybe it's impossible to give up politics.
Well, I have a great deal of respect for the Liberal Democrats, but I think that I won't vote for them this time because I'll vote for Mr McLean, and in particular he's keen on to preserve our way of life in the country, with hunting in particular.
Well, it's going to very disadvantage us because we've changed our farming policy since foot and mouth. We went out to dairy cows.
Well, certainly more people vote. Perhaps they see the impact on their lives more starkly than people do in the city. I found in London, many parts of London, there was a huge apathy because it seemed, like they used to say, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government always gets in.
So, I mean, when I saw you 7 years ago, you seemed content, happy in London. So why the change?
I neither felt that I was satisfying the community around me, nor did I feel I was satisfying myself. And that was obviously not an ideal situation.
At 42, when Neil first arrived in London from the Shetland Islands, he lodged with Bruce.
He was a model host, although he did always insist on measuring the amount of bath water there was in the bath. I'm not quite sure why that was.
He'd find the fridge a bit noisy, so he'd turn it off, or if I had to hoover, he'd walk round the block. Or
no, I accept that I wasn't the model lodger in every way. And however, that just only emphasises how patient you actually were. I've had little contact with Bruce. We've exchanged 1 or 2 letters, but maybe ours was a friendship which flourished, and it was a genuine friendship in the circumstances in which we found ourselves in London.
I think that's what happens in life, that people you're close to, and then circumstances drift you apart, and you find other people, and you wonder now and again what's happening to them, and hope they're all right. But that's what happens in life.
In the winter, if you lived in the country, well, it was just all wet and there wouldn't be anything for miles around.
I feel, especially sometimes when I'm on my own, that I'm losing touch with the way other people live.
Do you worry about your sanity?
Other people sometimes worry about it.
Like who?
As I said, I sometimes can be found behaving in an erratic fashion. I sometimes get very frustrated, very angry, for no apparent reason, for a reason which won't be apparent to other people around me.
Do you ever think you're going mad?
Oh, I don't think it, I know it. Well, because we're not allowed to use the word mad. But, I think most people are mad here, really.
How's your health?
It's probably very good at the moment, and living in this rural setting is obviously healthier than living in the middle of a city. There is less stress. I ended up with a former council flat, which is nothing luxurious, but I was lucky to get it, and as soon as I could see the view out of my window, across the stream and trees and the hills in the background, I knew I was in the right place. I know that many people say they feel closer to God in the countryside. I wouldn't want to be simplistic about it, but because
one is much closer to natural life. One's therefore much closer to the springs of life.
Yes, I'd say I believed in God.
Are you religious?
Well, I go to church with my parents on Sundays.
I don't know even now whether I do believe in God or not. I've thought an awful lot about it, actually, and I still don't know.
And how's he been treating you?
Well, I said to somebody last week that I preferred the Old Testament to the New Testament, because in the Old Testament, God is very unpredictable. And that's, I think, how I've seen him in my life.
My Jesus, my Savior, Lord, there is none like you. Tower of refuge and strength.
Remembering Jim and Anne, and Bruce and Julia, and Doreen as well, and also I was first a lay reader in London. And after completing a little more training, I was re-licensed by the Bishop of Carlisle. Nature is lovely, nature is made by God, but it's lovely. It gives me the peace of mind to accept when things don't go the way they want to. Politics can be a very bruising game. I will maintain my faith. I will continue to trust in God. Yes. I'm absolutely sure that my faith has helped me through these difficult times.
Would you ever see having a career in the church?
While I have a dedication to the church, I haven't experienced what I call a calling into the priesthood or anything of that kind. So the answer is no at the moment.
When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. But if I can't be an astronaut, I think I'll be a coach driver.
If the state didn't give us any money, it would probably just mean crime. And I'm glad I don't have to steal to keep myself alive.
Neil spends one day a week doing voluntary work for Oxfam.
Bernard, can you tell me why people keep putting non-classical? I enjoy doing this. It's relaxing. I love books, and I enjoy the company here as well.
John, you can't eat.
I'd much rather have a full-time job where I was being paid, but because of the council work I do, I really want a job in the rest of my time that isn't too stressful. Well, these are all £6.99 new, so I'm putting them in at £1.99. I get just over £200 a month allowance for being a councillor. On top of that, I get £9 a week job seekers allowance, and because I'm entitled to the job seekers allowance, I get my housing benefit as well, which pays my rent. I did some teaching of French to young children last year for a while, and that was very useful income while I did it.
When I go home, I come in and Mummy gives me a cup of tea.
I don't think I was really taught any sort of policy of living at all by my parents. This is probably their biggest mistake. That I was just left to fend for myself in a world which they seem completely oblivious of.
What I'd like most of all would be to be able to do something for my parents when they're older, to be there when the time is necessary. Well, my father died 5 years ago. I do feel, however, that I'm a little nearer to my mother since then, but both geographically and possibly emotionally. It's never been an easy relationship, and I'm not claiming that everything is healed now, but I feel I can speak to my mother.
And do you miss your dad?
I had a great relationship with my father when I was much younger. My relationship with him did deteriorate as I got older. I sometimes felt that he'd made the wrong decision in advice he'd given me or things he'd done, but then, you know, obviously he had his own life to lead, and just a few months before he died, we went together to a cricket match where we had what I knew would probably be the last long talk we would have, because he was dying at the time then, and I felt that we were both relaxed because we were doing something we enjoyed doing, which was relaxing in the sunshine and watching sport. So I felt that some bridging of the gap did take place that day.
When I get married, I don't want to have any children because they are always doing naughty things and making the whole house untidy.
I always told myself that I would never have children.
Why?
because children inherit something from their parents. And even if my wife were the most high-spirited and ordinary and normal of people, the child would still stand a very fair chance of being not totally full of happiness because of what he or she will have inherited from me.
No, I've never married, and I don't have a girlfriend at the moment. And it's one of the regrets of my life, actually, that I've not met somebody of the other sex I thought I could have a more permanent relationship with. But I'm probably not the easiest of people to get on with. I did have one girlfriend for close on 2 years, so maybe I'm not as completely hopeless a character as might appear to be the case.
Do you miss a physical side, a sexual side in your life?
Well, I'm a physical person, so I imagine I could be happy in a lasting relationship with somebody. But you have to make do with the reality. And there are many things that might have happened in my life that haven't happened. And there is little point in being regretful and angry about that.
You seem to have such a much stronger sense of purpose to your life than you've had before.
I see that life comes once and it's quite short, and you have to appreciate what's good in it. And if I could just tell us a short story. I was just sunbathing, and a butterfly landed quite close to me with beautiful wings, deep red colours and white sort of circles on them. And these creatures don't last very long, but it landed very close to me. It didn't seem frightened, and it just seemed to delight in opening and closing its wings and just actually being beautiful for that period of time, enjoying the sunshine. And perhaps there isn't actually any more to life than that, than just being what you are, realising that life goes on all around, and there are millions of other living creatures who all have to find their part as well.
At the end of their very special day in London, after their trip to the zoo and the party, we took our children to an adventure playground where they could do just what they liked. Those from the children's home set about building a house. There's Nicholas. And Tony. Andrew. John. And Bruce. Susie. Jackie and her friends. Give me a child until he is 7, and I will give you the man. This has been a glimpse of Britain's future.
I don't know about you, but I can't wait for the next one now. It's going to be 7 years, though, so we've loads of good stuff lined up while we're waiting, including our new comedy drama from the writer of Cold Feet. It stars Rick Mayall as a family man trying to keep his family on the straight and narrow. You'll be hooked, I promise you. That's next Thursday at 9. Next up tonight, the ITV News.